Without further ado, I want to introduce Nick, who's going to talk about what's new in Jamf Pro version 10.
Awesome. Thanks, John. Appreciate it. All right. Welcome, everyone. We are really excited to talk about what's new in Jamf Pro 10. We'll go into a little more depth than we did in the keynote here. So again, my name's Nick. Joining me also will be Joe and Marek as well. But let's dive into this. So, again, the mission here at Jamf is that we help organizations succeed with Apple. And we've been doing this for a number of years now, 15 years. And it's unfortunately time to say goodbye to the Casper Suite branding now. As you saw in our videos this morning, we literally poured one out for Casper Suite. And we are now moving forward with Jamf Pro. And of course, we all know what Jamf Pro is great at, doing zero-touch deployments, device configuration, app management, extensive inventory, security, and self-service. But the three key things that we want to talk about in 10 are these: the new look and feel, the new patch management capabilities, and what's new in self-service. Now, a lot of you have been around for a while and have used some of the previous versions of our software, and you may have upgraded from 8 to 9 back in the day. And so I want to say we've learned from previous upgrades in the past, which is why I also want to highlight what's not new in Jamf Pro 10. And that's there is really no major API change. So if you have integrations that you're doing right now, they will continue to work. The database is the same. That was a pain point going from 8 to 9 in the earlier days. So you can be rest assured that 10 will be great for you. And your workflows are going to be very familiar as well, too. So again, the big three that we're focusing on here is the new look and feel, patch management, and the new self-service. So let me walk through new look and feel here first. So there's 6 things that we think are really, really great in the new user interface. And the first one, of course, is the new dashboard with the dashboard cards. They're extremely easy to read. You get those dynamic updates, and you can just click to go into any of those policies. And as we saw earlier, you can just highlight over one of those, and it will change dynamically between the different values on there. Also, in the dashboard, you'll notice all of the buttons are now aligned in the upper right, making it just really easier for you to get to all the important things that you need to get to all the time, such as your sites, your accounts, your notifications, really quick access, and it's all grouped up right next to that global settings icon as well, too. And here we are clicking through to see what it looks like to change administrator there as well. We also talked about notifications as well, too. So you'll notice the new notifications tab, really easy to read. You'll get things like patch notifications, any sort of server warnings, like your APNS is about to run out, or other items like we saw with the device count as well. So that's the new dashboard. We think it's really, really great. Second thing are table views. And table views have been improved everywhere. So you can now resize the columns, and you can click to sort, making it really easy to just navigate through all of your data. But that's not all. We also snuck some interesting things into our buildings setting. So if you navigate over to settings and go over to the buildings, you'll see that we added some really nice table views here. And this is something that we're looking to do more of in the future. Specifically, this little button here in the upper right, which will allow you to easily rearrange your columns, modify your display options without having to go to any sort of separate menu whatsoever. So again, this is now in the buildings area where we kind of do a little bit of our test bed stuff. And it's also going to be in the patch notifications as well. And we're working on adding this to more. So that's table views. You can also do some great things with filtering just by clicking on that little funnel there. And this is kind of some of the work that we've been doing to abstract the data layer from our presentation layer. Again, you'll see more of this in future versions of 10. Number 3, we've got our collapsible menu. So, of course, if you want to have more space when you're working on it, you can just click on that little button in the lower left-hand corner. And we've sort of joked that this is expert mode or hard mode when you're working on your Jamf Pro server. And it just gives you nice more space to work with. And as we saw before, when you hover over items, you get to see those labels really clearly. Makes it a real joy to just work with. And when we compare them to the other sidebars in the past here, you'll see that they're pretty much aligned with what it used to be in the 9 series. Number 4, breadcrumbs. So you may have this, you're navigating around, and I go into self-service and, shoot, I forgot what self-service I actually went into. Thanks to breadcrumbs, you'll always be able to know where you are and easily be able to click back through the different settings as well, too. 5th thing that we're really proud of here in the new UI is those contextual warnings. So we saw this earlier in the keynote where we were trying to push out a configuration profile, but push notifications were disabled for us. So now when that warning happens, and this happened a lot in our training sessions, is that it will show that nice contextual warning for us. So you can solve really common issues quickly, and you can know what steps to take next. And of course, the last thing that we are proud of here in Jamf Pro 10 for the UI is how mobile-friendly it is. Access your dashboards, your notification, reporting, and some of the different commands as well, too. Now let's take a little bit deeper look. I'm going to invite Mark up here, and we're going to switch over to this Mac, and we'll talk about some of the other UI improvements that are on here. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks. Okay. So, welcome. Yeah, let's see how it works. As Nick said, we redesigned every single view in Jamf Pro. So let's start with the main one, so with the dashboard. At the top, we got the well-known icons of the user, notifications, and sites. On the left side, we gather all the tabs for managing devices, computers, and users. As well, the left side menu is collapsible. We can see all the labels if we just hover on the particular icons. Let's go to the full mode. And if we go to the dashboard, we see those beautiful items, beautiful design. Let's choose one. Oh, this. So if you hover on this, the data automatically refreshed. Even more, if you click on this, you are redirected to the page where you can see every single machine filtered by the status of this particular configuration profile. And now, something new and beautiful. So breadcrumbs, let's just enlarge it. So you can see where exactly you are, in which place of the process, and you can navigate directly to the page you want. So now, we are in the configuration profiles. You don't need to go back and forth to the main page and just start again. What's new? For example, let's go to the edit mode. Currently, all the buttons are stuck at the bottom. So whatever you do, they're always at the bottom. Let's choose. Thanks for that. As well, buttons, in some cases, are color-coded. So all the actions buttons like save, edit, or delete. Oh. Sorry. Yeah, we are back. So buttons are color-coded. Let's change something. So yeah, if we want to go and delete this particular configuration, we see that, for example, the delete button is red. So you see it already, and it pop up automatically. And go more further. If we go back to the Jamf dashboard, those, so the legend is also clickable, and it also redirects you to the filtered page of the instances, which in this case didn't fail. We've done a lot of small improvements for the user interface. Probably you will not notice them at the first sight, But for example, the one new thing which appeared in the settings panel is the Jamf Pro serverless logs. So previously, it was hidden. Now everyone can navigate it easily, and you can see what's going on in the backend with the logs. One more small feature, which is very nice. So if you go to device profile, maybe not configuration profiles, let's edit it. Sorry for that, not this one. Let's start a new one. That would be easier. Yeah. So this is a new self-service tab. As you can see, it's refreshed, but sorry for that. It's my first JNUC first presentation, so I'm a bit stressed. Sorry. I'm happy that I'm not speaking in my native language, so thanks. Thanks. Let's go directly to the settings. So all the flows, major flows, are exactly the same as it was in version 9. So if you go to the users, you see the users, and you know exactly how to add new user. So we didn't change a lot, but we changed a lot. I don't know if it does make sense, but it probably does. This is everything, so thanks. I will just pass to Nick.
Awesome.
Thanks.
If we could switch back to the slides here real quickly. So to just sort of recap, the new user interface is all about the new improved dashboard, interactive tables, that collapsible menu, the great breadcrumbs to see where you're at, so those contextual warnings, and how mobile friendly it is too. The second big thing that we want to talk about is patch management. I'm going to bring Joe up here, product owner of Jamf Pro, to talk through patch management. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you. All right. So again, very grateful that everybody came out today. And what I'm going to do is talk through a couple of different items. Now, as a reminder, you'll see that there's other sessions for patch. There's one on Thursday that is really a deep dive into some of the patch management. So I encourage you to go to that if that's an area that you're interested in. I'll also be showing you some self-service things. And before I forget, I want to remind you that after this session in this room, we will be doing a tour of the new self-service. And so that is an even more in-depth view of what we're doing in that area. Now, on the patch side, what I wanted to talk about first is the way that we view patch management here at Jamf. We really look at it as 4 areas that we're going to focus on. The first of those is identifying that there's a patch, right? This is a very important and key step in the process because we actually have to notify you, of course, that there's a patch available. You saw earlier today in the demo of the notification area that you can get notifications on new patches directly in Jamf Pro. So if you go into Jamf Pro, you'll see those notifications there, and we'll notify you that there's a patch right in the interface. But you can also get those via email if you want, and so you can get an email update saying there's a new patch available. Very key part of this process. I want to start really by diving into that identify piece. Now, I'll be honest, this is something that we shipped in 9.9.3 about a year ago. We've made some improvements. We've made it compatible with Jamf Pro 10. We've enhanced some things around the reporting and the dashboards. So I'll show you those things in just a moment. At this point, with our patch management solution, we're currently tracking about 36 titles. Now, if you're using patch today, and show of hands, is anybody turned on patch reporting? Very good. One of the things that you're going to see in the 10 release is that we have started to also report on the Jamf apps. So you're going to see Jamf admin, for example, formerly Casper admin. You're going to see self-service in there as well. So we're going to report on those titles and bring those to you as well. But generally speaking, we've got 36 titles that we vet. We follow those and make sure within 24 hours we take a look at those, validate that they're good, and then we notify you that those updates are available. All of those are, of course, monitored by Jamf. We provide those updates And the great thing about the way that we report on this is that we also show all of the older versions of those. So we'll set up that later, and I'll demo that. Here in the interface, what we're looking at is the basics of how you set this up. So if you've turned on the patch notifications and you want to start monitoring certain pieces of software, you might not want to monitor everything, but maybe there's a few you want to start with. You'd come into patch management over on the left, and then you'd set up a new patch. So when I dive into this, I'll see all of the software titles that are here. And then as I look at these software titles, I'll pick the one that I want. So let's just say that I'm going to monitor this one. And I'll come in here, and now I have a number of little pieces of information that inform me about what's going on. The first is the software title, and so you'll see some basics about this. And then we have extension attributes potentially available. Certain pieces of software that we're monitoring require an extension attribute. So we'll just ask that you accept that because that's necessary as part of the way that we can monitor that. The other piece is the definitions. This is really important. This is the log of all of the versions that have been released. The great thing about this is that it shows you the release date. It also tells you a little bit about this. Is this going to require a reboot? Is this an incremental update that is required? There's some other things as well as you get into the notifications where you'll get to see also what are the applications that need to close. And so we've built in more features and functionality around how we can manage that for you. So here we're looking at the patch policy piece. And this is what's one of the major new things. And as we come in here and I define a report, I can see here's all the devices, right? So these are the software versions. These are the devices and counts. I've got some new table functionality. And this is just that snapshot view. So now I can see, OK, these are some of the versions that are running. These are eligible devices, right? So we're only showing here those devices that already have the software, and they're eligible to get an update. So you can see by version what the scenario is for a particular piece of software. Now, one of the things that comes up a lot is the why of this, right? So there's certain pieces of software that have different requirements. You might not be as picky about deploying a new version of a web browser, but you might be very picky about things that have security vulnerabilities, other software titles that require those more frequent updates. So just seeing that, being able to put that in the dashboard as well will help in managing those particular, maybe more time-sensitive things that need to be patched. I also have this nice display. So as I click on all of these things, it's dynamic, and it will show me the devices that I want to see here. And we have the ability, as Dave showed earlier in the keynote, to drag these around to do some filtering and customize the view that's here. So that's really the identify piece. It covers off on the things that we want to let you know about devices that are running versions, what versions are available, notify you that those versions are there and waiting for you. I'm going to talk a little bit about the package process and upload. I'm not going to go into it in a lot of detail, but today it is still a manual process. But we know that there's a lot of integrations that are available. There's third-party tools, there's open source tools, and we know that if you're comfortable in using those already, we want to help you make those. It's part of that Jamf and story that we've been telling, the power of Jamf and. We know that there's certain things that we need to build to enable this, but our direction is to continue to look at those integrations and make it easier for you so that beyond those titles that we're reporting on, you can have some custom titles that you're interested in and report on those as well. And then integrate with some of those packaging tools so that you don't have to package. And then make it easy for you to upload and get those into your distribution points. All of those are things that we're looking at doing to fix and complete how you can do the packaging and the uploading so it's not so manual. Now, typically today, if you're in here, this is not going to be new to anybody, but if I wanted to upload a package, I would go into my packages, select a new package, and then load the file. Save that, and I'm going to upload that. Now, in the case of what I'm showing you today, I'm using the Jamf Cloud Distribution Server. So we've been doing a lot of investments in that as a distribution point. And so that's where you'll see the patches today. And that leads me then from the package and upload into the fourth step, and that's the applying. On the apply side, this is the brand new patch policy that we're introducing in Jamf Pro 10. The patch policy is purpose-built, so it's automatically scoped only to eligible devices, and then you can refine it from there as you would normally. The nice thing about the patch policy is that what we're really trying to accomplish is an acknowledgement to the end user so that they know what's going on. So as I show this, you'll see that there's user notifications. You can make these available in self-service. And all of this goes towards that final and key piece of making sure that you're keeping all of your software up to date. So when you set this up, I'll start here at the reporting tab and then go over to patch. So the patch policies here require that you have at least one definition. And the definition is the log of all of the versions. So if I'm looking at Google Chrome and I don't have any Google Chrome packages, and I don't have them assigned to any versions of Google Chrome that I'm reporting on, I need to make sure I make those associations. So I'd first come in and I would select the definition. That would take me then over to the definition tab. Again, some of those ways of doing contextual help for you, so that if you're in an area of the interface and you're not sure where to go next, we can make it easy for you to go there. And then here I would come in and edit, and I'll see these are the various versions of Google Chrome, and I can click on the one that I want to add and associate. At this point, I have my definition done. I'm ready to go in and create a new patch policy. So I save that. And now I'm here on the patch policy area. Now, one of the things that we look at here, we know that there's different kind of staging activities or rings of deployment. So you could look at setting up any number of groups here that you want to define. So you might have an internal IT test group. You might have an alpha or a beta group that is some of the early adopters that give you feedback on new pieces of software. So we would expect or really suggest that you set that up so that when you go in here to the policies, you have them scoped to the groups that you want to deploy to, and you can set those up. Now here I'm going to select a new patch policy. And I'll drill in here and just show you some of the highlights. When you're setting this up, one of the first things that you do is you associate what version you want to push out, right? So I have a drop-down menu here on the upper left, and that's going to show me any version. So in this case, we're looking at Chrome. What are the versions of Google Chrome that I have a package for, and that I've associated that package with this version? Those would be available for deployment. And I also have this additional information here, where I can see some of the basics. Does it require a reboot? Are there things that need to close? So in this case, you'll see that Google Chrome needs to close. I also then have, as part of this, a little bit more information about how I'm going to distribute it. Do I want to make it available in self-service? Do I want to push it automatically? And then I can do some of that refinement. So this should look very familiar. Again, the main difference here is that we're scoping automatically to eligible devices. You do have a link there in that contextual message where you can see the devices that are eligible. So if you wanted to just get a snapshot, these are all the devices I can pick from. Those are there. And then you can refine your scope as needed. So here's an example of these are all of the eligible devices for patch. So I come in here, I save my scope, and now I can do a little bit further notification to the end user. So we talk about that empowering people with technology that puts humans first. That self-service side is really where we've made a lot of investments, and I'll show you that a little bit later, as far as the user experience goes. So on this side, we have a list of the things that you can do. So this is things like, what is the icon going to look like? Do I have to, can I defer it, right? Can I give them maybe 15 days or 20 days or 21 days? So that they can wait and not force the patch right away. When that happens, I also have the ability to say, OK, your time has expired. You can't defer it anymore. But here's a little window. I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. And I'm going to allow you to have some additional information about what we're going to do to inform the end user of what's going to happen to their device. So you can preview this message, and then should that be a scenario that they run into, they'll know what's going to happen. This is an example of sort of that staging workflow. So I've set up 3 different groups here. I can deploy out my patches to each of them incrementally as I desire. and I can change that view as well. So this view is similar to that dashboard view, where now I can focus in and I get just a little bit more information, but I have a visual cue that helps me understand what the deployment process is like for each of those groups that I'm working with. And so that really covers off on patch. Now I'd like to go to the demo and show you some of this in action. So here I am now in Jamf Pro 10. I also would like to note that I've been running Jamf Pro 10 for quite some time, and I've been demoing it from an iPad when I go to conferences. So on that whole UX side of what we look at, the mobile-friendly piece really transfers over really well, and I had to kind of remind some people when I was doing my demos that I was on an iPad. And you can tilt the screen. It's very responsive. It made for a really, really good way of showcasing what's new in the Jamf Pro 10 interface. Now, I'm specifically going to show you some of the patch functionality. So I'm going into Computers and down into the lower left here to our patch management area. So I have a few set up here. I'm going to show you an example of setting up a new one. So when I hit the New button, I get to that list. So these are those software titles. On this view, you get when was it last updated. So you get a little bit more information here to inform you of what's going on with each piece of software. And let's say that I wanted to patch Adobe Flash Player, for example. I can set that up. And now starting left to right, you'll see with this particular software title that I've picked, I do have extension attributes to accept. I've got the display name that I want to use for this, information about the publisher. I can put this into a category. I can scope this to a site. And then I can choose how I want to get my notifications. Do I want to get those notifications only in the Jamf Pro UI, or do I want to get those over an email as well? And all of that is customized up in this area of your profile where you do your notifications. So make sure that those are turned on so that you're actually getting these. So you have to turn them on here to be informed, but you also need to check your notifications and make sure that you've got the right level of notifications enabled across your entire user account. Now, as I click over here, you'll see here's the extension attribute that we're using. And then I've got my log of all of the different definitions. So you can see as I look at this, the most recent was October 16th at 1 a.m., 27.0.01.107. And then when I'm ready, I can save this, and it gets added to my list. So if I look at one in particular, let's say I'm going to look at Microsoft Word. Here's an example of that report. Again, very similar to what we see in the dashboard. We reflect that here, and you can see whose latest version. And I've got 2, Laura and Mark. And I've got 14 on other versions. A nice little thing about this part of the interface, let's say I'm looking at this and I see something that I don't really expect. I see a device that I didn't expect to see here. I can actually click in and scope now straight to that device and see more information about what's going on with that device. So maybe I want to see the application log here, check out some of the usage data or something like that. I can do all of that straight from the interface, and when I'm done, I just click Done, and it takes me right back to where I was. This is just one of those subtle things, very similar to the breadcrumbs, but it brings us right back to where we expect to be, because that's what I was doing. I was here, I was taking action on this particular software title. Now, when I go into my software definition, as we saw in the deck, I get a little bit more information here, and I can come in and edit and associate a new package to one of these versions. Now, we have a new version that came out recently for Microsoft Word, and I've already uploaded that here, and I can just click in and associate that. So you'll see here on this 17.101 that I've got that package now associated, and I can save that. Now I can deploy this. So the parts that I've skipped here are those parts around packaging and uploading to the distribution point. And that's where we talk about some of the future work that we'll do to help you integrate with that power of Jamf and use some of those common tools that are available. Now I'm going to go in here to the patch policy, and you'll see here I also have that example of 3 different tiers. I have an approved version, I've got an IT-only testing, and I've got a user acceptance training group. So I can choose how I want to deploy this out and start with my internal IT testing and then roll it slowly out to the other groups. Now, if I was going to create one of these from scratch, I would just click on New, and now I get some of that additional configuration to make it a good user experience. So I've got my display name here. I can choose if I want to enable or not enable this yet. So maybe I just want to set this up and not enable it right away. I can do that. Here in my list, I've got the 2 versions of Word that I've added packages to. So if you want to remove packages and that sort of thing, you can certainly do that. I care about these 2 maybe because for some reason I might want to roll certain groups back, and then I can accommodate some of those workflows. And here again, you've got that additional information. You've got release date. You've got require incremental. Is a reboot restarted? Reboot required? Are there any dependencies? And then apps that have to quit. So in this case, very simple. Microsoft Word has to quit. We don't need to do a reboot. Should be a fairly straightforward thing to push out to our users. We also know, of course, then the eligible minimum operating system that is required for this. Now, as I scroll down here again, we get the distribution method. Do I want to just put this in self-service, or do I want to install it automatically? And then there's 2 additionals. There's a patch unknown versions, which is really one of those scenarios where maybe we don't understand what version particularly it is. It's not in that list of definitions. But we want to patch it anyway, because we see that Word is actually there. And we want to make sure that they're on the version that we want to deploy. The other is to allow downgrade. Now, what that does is if I push this software out and it's able to be downgraded, if somebody then on their own loaded their own new version of that software, we would see that and we would be able to force them back to the approved version. That's just to keep people on versions, and so it's going to vary by software title. But essentially, that's one of those ways that you can gate people so that they're always on the version that you want them to be on. Next, I want to show you the scoping. And again, this is very straightforward, very similar to how this works today. Right now, if I wanted to target some specific computers, I could do that. And maybe I just want to find one here that I like. Maybe I'll give this to Jen today. Maybe I'll add this Joe book, and I can save that. And then I've got my user interactions. This is really the core of enabling the end user. So this is where you define some of the things that happen in self-service. So what do I want the button to say? And that's fairly straightforward. We defaulted it to upgrade, or to update, but you can certainly change that if you want. We also have the additional description available. So let me come in and edit this here. So I can modify what I want that button to say. I can provide a little bit more context to the end user. Maybe, in fact, if I already know, because Jamf has told you, that a certain application needs to close, or maybe there's a reboot required, you could actually put that information here as well for them. Anything that you want to help that end user know what to do or what's going to happen. You can provide an icon, either a new icon or select an existing icon as part of that to display in self-service. And then we've got our notifications and our reminders. So again, self-service now is a native macOS app. Integrates really well with the notification center. You can choose how you want to deploy this. Do I just want to do things like badge the dock icon for self-service and put a notification in the self-service app itself? You can do that. But if you want to go the extra step, then you can also put that into the notification center. Now when I display that, I again have that opportunity to help the end user. I can put a subject to what I want it to say when a notification pops up, and I can customize that, as well as the message associated with that. You can also do reminders. So again, if you need to kind of help encourage them, certain software titles, you can pick how many days you want for that reminder to go out. Now, I also want to set a deadline and a grace period, and this is also where you do that. So this single pane is how you're going to define that user interaction. Now, I'm going to require 7 days, but I'm going to give them this 15-minute grace period. So essentially, at that point, I can customize this message here. And when I preview that, this is what it's going to show up as. Should we get into that scenario where it's been 7 days, and after 7 days this user hasn't done anything, I even did a reminder and they still didn't update, well, at least now I can present them with this notification, inform them that Word is going to quit in 15 minutes. Please save anything you're working on, quit those apps, and we will push that update automatically. So that's how you set up and define a new patch policy. If we can go back to the deck here, I'll take you through some of these final slides as they relate to patch management. And this carries us in, because now we've deployed a patch, it carries us into that workflow of what does the end user experience look like on the self-service side. So on the patch management side, what we're looking at here is patch notifications, reporting on a fixed set of software titles, some patch policies, brand new to Jamf Pro 10, linking that package to the definition, the scoping of that, and then defining that user experience. And this all provides us a nice framework for that power of Jamf and those future integrations. That takes me into the new self-service. So the new self-service, I'm going to show you what the self-service that you're accustomed to using today looks like, so you can just kind of visualize the difference between the two. It's always very helpful. This is the existing self-service, something that we've known and loved for a long time. But we've also recognized that one of the key things in making this better and more usable is to really focus on the end user's side of how they interact with this and follow some of the standards and things that we've seen, ways that, for example, the App Store operates. So this is what the new self-service looks like by comparison. Now, again, you can put this behind a login if you want. So when they log in, you can use your single sign-on workflows. That is supported. So when you define your single sign-on in Jamf Pro, you can force your user into that same workflow. In this case here, again, we've got some very easy navigation. And I'll take you through here the sides. This is where the bookmarks would show up as well. So as you go through these areas, you can, again, categorize all of the applications, policies, printers, things that you want to put in the fingertips of your end users. And again, the bookmarks also now are scopable. So when you show the bookmarks, those also are going to be more relevant to the end user. The other thing I want to highlight is dynamic buttons. So I experienced this myself when I first started working at Jamf and using self-service to set up a device. You're trying to install some of those applications that you want, and you click install, and it installs, but you don't have that visual cue that it actually installed, because the button still says install. So how do we make that process better? We do that in part with dynamic buttons. On the dynamic button side, this is what it would look like to the end user. I'm going to use Dropbox as my example here. So you'll see I've got the Dropbox icon. I've got a description of this. They can close out of this, or they can install it. When I go into the install, now I get more visual cues and more feedback about what's going on. So I know that this is now executing, finishing, and ultimately done. You get the visual cues here, but when it finishes, you also will see that in the history tab, so you have that audit log of what you've been doing, what you've been installing on your device. Now, the other nice thing about this is the dynamic button that I mentioned, where when I close out of this, you'll see that now on Dropbox, it says reinstall. These are customized, so you can label them as you wish. And again, you might have certain things you want to treat a little bit differently based on the behavior of what it is. If it's a policy that you want to run on a regular basis, you might have a rerun, those kinds of things. That can all be customized. And in fact, if you go back to the keynote where we were showing our demonstration of how we interact with Intune and Azure Active Directory for compliance, we redirect automatically to a URL in self-service. So you can do that and scope directly to those URLs. It launches that. And we had a policy there that was set up to basically say, I need to fix my password. So you can customize what that button says. And then when you click on that in that use case, what we're doing is we're making sure that they've got the configuration profile that's going to ensure the password restriction. Those are all the kinds of workflows that you can do. And you also, of course, have this information button as well, so you can get more information about, again, that application itself. So next I want to talk about the History tab. Now that I've installed Dropbox, I'm going to see that also Dropbox shows up here in my list of things that I've done. So as an onboarding of a new hire, I can install the things that I need. I can see what I've installed so that if I'm trying to track my own progress and figure out what I need, I can do it straight from the library where I'm installing applications. But I can also go back and check my history and see what I've done. Now, as I said, this also interacts directly with our patch notifications. So on the patch side, you'll see here an example of badging that dock icon. And as well, the notification center, if you caught it, popped up really quickly. Let me back this up, and I can show you that again. I badge it, my notification center update comes in, and I've also now got information on the Updates tab for me. Now, if you're just going to use self-service and not the notification center, you still get the badge. Up in the upper right, you'll get that update that shows up for them when they launch self-service, so they can get that additional information. This is that message that you want to provide. And it shows up again on the Updates tab. Again, very similar to the App Store workflows, so they can see a list. If I, for example, come in and I have 5 things I need to patch, I can click on the button that says Update All. Alternatively, I can choose which ones I want to update. And this is where you can also inform the user of some of those things, like this one's going to require a reboot, so maybe you want to install other ones first and do this one later at the end of the day, that sort of thing. So there's the Update All button and the Update button itself. So if I wanted to update my Google Chrome here, again, I get that visual feedback that it's executing, that it's done. And now the Updates tab is going to not show Google Chrome anymore, and the History tab is going to show that I just installed an update to Google Chrome. All, again, helping the end user. You'll see that as a very regular theme here today, the power of Jamf and empowering the end user. The other nice thing about this is the way that the patch report reflects what I've just done in self-service. So now my patch report is also updated, and I can see that reflected here, and now all of my devices are on the right version that I wanted. And we also showed in the keynote some of the branding, and that's all brandable in the Jamf Pro 10 interface, so you can go to the computer management area of settings, go into self-service, and do the branding there. But you'll see where this is here. You've got the banner, you've got some text, and you've got the icon. Persistent across updates. So again, establishing some of that trust. Why is that important? I'm sure many of you know, but really, this is not, as I've said earlier today, this is not our app. We view this as your app. It's for your users. We want them to trust it, understand it, know it, and therefore have confidence when they're using it. So you'll see here again, the banner is branded. The icons are branded. So you see over here, we've branded this one as Acme Technologies. So you'll see it in the lower left between the system preferences and Google Chrome. And that's also reflected in the dock. If you go into your applications, you'll also see that icon reflected there. So overall, our self-service solution is now a native, modern macOS app. It's easy to browse the library. You've got your dynamic buttons. We now have that download history to provide additional information. It interacts very closely with our patch notifications. It's completely brandable. And in addition, as I noted before, the bookmarks are now scopable. So I'm going to kick over now back to our demo machine. OK.
We're running out of time, so it is 2:15, which is the end of this session. So the next session here, if you're looking for more stuff about self-service, is actually specifically about self-service. So I do have one $10 bill for Mr. Jay Dornkamp. If somebody has a question, we can, anyone have a question to send us kind of something? Yeah, we got a hand up in front.
It's a legitimate question. I'm not doing it for $10.
Yeah, sure.
But so I
Can you actually, I'm sorry, can you just speak into the mic behind you? You got to get the mic to get the $10. That's how that works. If I repeat it, then is the bonus that I keep the $10?
And actually, can we also go back to the slide deck? Because I'm going to steal a minute and go through a couple of other things.
What's the question?
Go ahead.
So the question is, I've been working with our marketing team for the branding. I know it's really hard to see, but I'm proud of it, and I'm proud of our marketing team.
Yeah.
So we have kind of this stupid little green icon that's going to be our app icon to use.
Yeah, that's great.
But the banner, do you guys have templates or dimensions that we need to use so that I can hand that to my marketing team and get, hopefully by next week, a finished product?
Yeah, so specific, I don't have anything off the top of my head for what those dimensions need to be.
1,500 by 500.
But Nick does, and it's 1,500 by 500.
Perfect, thank you so much.
So
I believe that you'll
again.
see that in the branding section as well.
Yeah.
I feel like I got to actually give this gentleman the $10 to keep my word.
Yeah.
So Joe's got a few more things to cover. If anyone's interested, let's give him a round of applause. But if anybody else needs to leave, thank you so much.
All right. I promise I will make it very quick. We did SCEP Proxy. It's in 10. SCEP Proxy allows Jamf Pro to issue certificates from the SCEP server directly so that all of your endpoints don't need to go talk to the SCEP server. Instead, you set up Jamf Pro to talk to your SCEP server, and now the certificates will be issued with Jamf Pro brokering them directly to your endpoints. We've had a lot of requests around this, and I'm very happy to say that this is now shipping in 10. Scaling very quickly. Scaling is something that we're always focused on, and we have ongoing initiatives to help with scaling across your environment. Investments in caching, investments in refactoring certain parts of the software, the database, all of those things to maintain your environment. And if you're going with Jamf Cloud, there's a lot of benefits that you'll get from us taking over some of that management, but architecturally, they're fundamentally still the same. So a lot of the scaling benefits that we provide will also be available to you in an on-premises environment. You saw that we did multiple betas. We now have the ability to do multiple beta programs. We really want to get your feedback as soon, as often as we can as we're developing code. We're going to smaller, more frequent releases. So it was mentioned earlier today that we are very close to cutting the beta for 10.1. Which might be surprising, but it's really exciting because by having more frequent and smaller releases, we can get things to you faster. And also, it's a smaller release, so it helps us with other things like ensuring quality. The other approach that we've taken is the platform as a service, the Jamf and story. We talked a little bit about the marketplace and the developer portal. Marketplace is where you can find integrations, marketplace.jamf.com. Then there's developer.jamf.com for finding out how to use the API, some information on webhooks. Very good tools. Please check those out. We launched our ServiceNow Discovery app. That was coordinated with the last Apple release in September. Just happenstance, but really excited about that. All your iOS, macOS, and tvOS inventory right in ServiceNow. And with that, basically what we covered today was the new look and feel. Not advancing anymore. There we go. We covered the new look and feel. We talked about patch. Coming up right here on this stage is going to be the new self-service, a deeper dive. And so honestly, it worked out pretty well that I didn't get to show that. You'll get to see that if you're interested. Just stick around here. We took a look at the Jamf Pro interface. And ultimately, as a reminder, our mission is to help organizations succeed with Apple. We really want to empower you to do the things that you need to do. And ultimately, that means we get to execute on that purpose of empowering people with technology that puts humans first. Thank you for sticking around. I apologize for running over a little bit. Thank you.